Every week for 20 years. A delivery arrived at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles. 6 red roses. Left at the same grave. By the same man. Without a single word of explanation. The man was Joe Dimaggio. One of the greatest baseball players who ever lived. A national hero. A man so famous that when he walked into a room, anywhere in America, people stopped breathing for a moment. And for 20 years after her death, he sent 6 red roses to Marilyn Monroe's grave. Every single week. Until the day he died. He never explained why. Not once. Not to anyone. Most people think they know this story. A famous couple. A turbulent marriage. A bitter divorce after just 9 months. But here is what they don't tell you. The divorce wasn't the end. For Joe Dimaggio it was never the end. Let's go back to the beginning. 1952. Joe Dimaggio was the most celebrated athlete in America. Marilyn Monroe was a rising star. Not yet the icon she would become, but already impossible to ignore. They were introduced by a mutual friend. Joe had seen her photograph in a newspaper, a promotional image, wholesome and bright, and he had asked, quietly, if someone could arrange a meeting. He expected dinner. Conversation. Perhaps a pleasant evening. He was not prepared for what actually happened. She walked in late. She always walked in late. And Joe Dimaggio, the man who had faced down the greatest pitchers in baseball, who had played in front of 70,000 screaming fans without flinching, felt something shift inside him. Later, friends said he couldn't take his eyes off her. Not because of how she looked, though she looked extraordinary, but because of how she talked. How she listened. How she laughed. He had expected a Hollywood actress. He found something he hadn't been looking for. They dated for 18 months before they married. It wasn't smooth. Joe was private, almost reclusive, a man who wanted a quiet home, dinner at 6, a wife who belonged to him and not to the world. Marilyn was the world's. She knew it. She needed it. The attention, the adoration, the flashbulbs, they weren't vanity. They were oxygen. They were the antidote to everything that had been taken from her in that orphanage yard. Joe understood this. He didn't accept it. But he understood it. January 14, 1954. They married at San Francisco City Hall. The photographs from that day show 2 people luminous with happiness. Marilyn in a dark suit, her smile so wide it seemed to take over her whole face. Joe beside her, proud, fierce, protective in a way that looked like love because it was love. Complicated, possessive, consuming love. But love. The marriage lasted 9 months. 9 months of arguments about her career. About the photographs. About the men who looked at her. About the dress, the white dress, the famous dress that she wore over a subway grate in a 7-year itch, while Joe watched from the crowd and felt something break inside him. He didn't say anything that night. He didn't have to. The people around them said his face was something they never forgot. October 1954. Marilyn filed for divorce. She cited mental cruelty. Joe did not contest it. He stood outside the courthouse after it was over and a reporter asked him how he felt. He said nothing. He just walked away. But here is what the headlines didn't capture. 3 days after the divorce was finalized, Joe Dimaggio helped Marilyn Monroe move into her new apartment. He carried her boxes. He put up her shelves. He made sure she was safe. And then he left. Over the next 8 years, they stayed in each other's lives in ways that defied easy explanation. He never remarried. She married Arthur Miller, a brilliant, difficult man who understood her mind but not her soul, and when that marriage collapsed too, it was Joe she called. Not her agent. Not her lawyer. Joe. He came. He always came. By 1961, Marilyn was in crisis. The marriages had failed. The pills had taken hold. The studio had pushed her to the edge of what a human being could endure. She was committed briefly, terrifyingly, to a psychiatric facility in New York. Payne Whitney Clinic. A place she later described as a prison. She called Joe from inside. He flew to New York. He walked into that clinic and he told them quietly, in the way that men who have nothing left to prove are quiet, that he was taking her home. And they let him. Because no one argued with Joe Dimaggio when he had made up his mind. She spent the following weeks recovering at his side. No cameras. No Hollywood. No performance. Just Norma Jean. And Joe. And something that, for a few weeks, looked almost like peace. Friends who saw them together during that time said they had never seen Marilyn so still. So rested. So genuinely herself. She told one friend. Joe is the only man who ever loved me without wanting something from me. By the summer of 1962, they were talking about remarrying. Joe had asked. Marilyn had not said no. The date they had discussed, the date that would have been their second wedding, was just weeks away when she died. August 4, 1962. Joe Dimaggio identified her body. He organized her funeral. He kept it small and private, specifically, deliberately excluding the Hollywood elite, the Kennedy circle, the people he blamed, in the wordless way of a man who never explained himself, for what had happened to her. He stood at her grave. And then he began to send the roses. 6 red roses. Every week. For 20 years. People asked him why 6. He never answered. People asked him if he still loved her. He never answered. People asked him if he blamed himself for the divorce, for the years they lost, for the weeks before her death when perhaps, if things had moved faster, if the date had been sooner. He never answered. In 1999, Joe Dimaggio was dying. He had kept his silence for 37 years. On his deathbed, the people closest to him said they heard him speak one sentence. Just one. I'll finally get to see Marilyn. He died the next morning. 6 red roses. Every week. For 20 years. No explanation. No apology. No performance. Just a man who loved a woman the world never quite knew how to hold. And who kept showing up, long after everyone else had stopped. Subscribe. Because next week, the night she sang Happy Birthday to the President. The dress. The song. And what happened in the weeks that followed. It was the most dangerous performance of her life.